My name is Fiona, and I'm 32 years old. My life has always been a series of calculated steps, or so I thought. But nothing could have prepared me for the cunning deception that unraveled my world. It all started with a family dinner at our suburban home in Franklin, Tennessee. My husband, Ethan, had invited his mother, Mrs. Grace Harper, and his 16-year-old niece, Lila, over for the weekend. Grace was always cordial in public, but held an air of superiority that made every encounter feel like a chess game where I was always on the defensive. Lila, on the other hand, was a bubbly teenager who seemed harmless, but her mischievous glances often made me question her innocence. During dinner, Grace admired a sapphire necklace I was wearing. It was a gift from my late grandmother, a woman who had taught me the value of perseverance and strength. The necklace wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a legacy, a symbol of everything my grandmother had passed down to me. "Oh, Fiona, what a stunning piece," Grace said, her eyes narrowing as the sapphire sparkled under the dining room chandelier. "It must be worth a fortune." I smiled politely. "It's priceless to me, Mrs. Harper. It was my grandmother's." Grace leaned back, her lips curling into a sly smile. "Family heirlooms are meant to be shared, my dear. Don't you agree?" I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I brushed it off. Little did I know this was the beginning of their plan. The following morning, Grace approached me in the kitchen while I was preparing coffee. "Fiona, darling," she began in a sugary tone, "Lila has a formal dance next weekend, and she doesn't have any statement jewelry. She's been raving about your necklace since last night. Would you consider lending it to her for just one evening?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure, Mrs. Harper. It's very delicate, and I'd hate for something to happen to it." "Oh, nonsense. Lila is responsible for her age, and I'll personally ensure it's returned to you in perfect condition," she insisted, her eyes locking onto mine with a determined gaze. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping it would earn me some goodwill in the family. I handed over the necklace, watching as Grace's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. A week passed, and there was no word from Grace or Lila about returning the necklace. I called Ethan's phone, but he was tied up at work and dismissed my concern as paranoia. Frustrated, I decided to visit Grace's home to retrieve it myself. When I arrived, Grace greeted me with a syrupy smile that immediately put me on edge. Lila wasn't home, she claimed, but she assured me the necklace was safe. "Oh, Fiona, don't you trust me?" she said, feigning offense. Lila loved the necklace so much. She wore it to show her friends. She must have accidentally left it at her friend's house. "Which friend?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Grace waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, you know how teenagers are. She'll bring it back. Don't be such a worrywart." A few days later, I discovered the truth in the most humiliating way. During a shopping trip in downtown Franklin, I spotted Lila walking into a pawn shop. My heart sank. I followed her inside and watched from a distance as she handed over my grandmother's necklace in exchange for a wad of cash. Anger surged through me, and I stormed up to the counter. "What do you think you're doing, Lila?" I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. Lila froze, her face turning pale. "Aunt Fiona, I was just—" "Save it," I snapped, snatching the necklace from the stunned pawnbroker before he could finalize the transaction. Lila's excuse spilled out in a rush. "Grandma Grace said we could sell it to pay for my trip to Florida. She said you'd never notice it was gone." My blood boiled. Grace had orchestrated the entire scheme, using Lila as her accomplice. I left the shop without another word, clutching the necklace tightly in my hand. That evening, I confronted Ethan, Grace, and Lila at a family meeting. I laid the necklace on the table as evidence. "Care to explain this?" I asked, glaring at Grace. Grace didn't even flinch. "Oh, Fiona, don't be so dramatic. It's just a necklace." "Just a necklace?" I echoed, my voice shaking. "It's my grandmother's legacy, and you tried to sell it behind my back." Lila burst into tears, but Grace remained composed. "You're overreacting, dear. It's not like we meant any harm." "Not meant any harm?" I snapped. You betrayed my trust. Both of you. Ethan, to my shock, sided with his mother. It's not that big of a deal, Fiona. They were just trying to help Lila. Let it go. That was the breaking point. I stood up, holding the necklace close to my chest. No, Ethan, I won't let it go. This is theft, and I won't tolerate it. The following day, I filed a police report against Grace and Lila for attempted theft. While the law took its course, I packed my things and left the house, moving to a friend's place until I could figure out my next steps. Grace and Lila received a stern warning from the police, and the incident left a permanent scar on my relationship with Ethan and his family. I decided to file for divorce, realizing I deserved better than a husband who couldn't stand up for what was right. Now, as I wear the necklace again, I don't just see a family heirloom. I see a reminder of my strength and my ability to stand up for myself, no matter who tries to deceive me.